If you're looking for a forgiving jet that you can afford on a budget, the 64mm FMS Rafale is your safest bet. It's incredibly locked, more maneuverable than a BMW, and has some awesome scale details even the Balsa boys could appreciate. FMS sent us this model last month, and we'll be honest, we were prepared to be disappointed! But upon receiving it and putting a few packs through it, our jaws dropped. This is one of the best flying park flyer-sized jets we've ever owned, and for only a $200 price tag with free shipping. Per usual, let's start in the ground with this one. Assembling the model out of the box took about 30 minutes. The provided directions were clear, and we really only had one complaint. The servo extension lead for the right wing wasn't attached to the factory tape. No biggie though. One part of the assembly process we loved was that the main gear easily snaps in and out. This means that if you don't have a hard surface to routinely fly from, you can quickly switch to hand launching. As always, we replaced the provided Velcro with UmaGrip. Dear UmaGrip, please sponsor us. We'll literally go to the ends of the earth to... For our first flight, we opted to give the provided Reflex V2 gyro a shot, but it just wasn't our cup of tea.
Sounds like a skill issue to me.
There's nothing wrong with it, give it a shot yourself, but we opted to go without it from here on out. Our initial impressions of the Rafale were extremely positive. Immediately upon first picking it up, I was amazed at how light the thing is. Who needs heavy retracts at the cost of a flying brick when you can have the feather-light FMS 64mm Rafale? I could tell this jet would slow down without committing mass murder thanks to the low wing loading. We started off doing some 1G and accelerated stalls on our first flight.
Pull up elevator. Holding it. Holding it. Holding it. Holding it. Wow, look at that, man.
For our first few flights, we went with the furthest forward recommended center of gravity, or CG, from the manual, using our Liperior 4S 2200 pack. This is a great, stable, and forgiving CG to fly it with for your first flights. From then on, we began sliding the battery back more and more, which allowed the jet to get into an amazingly locked high alpha. The footage speaks for itself, but there was absolutely no wing rocking, and I never felt like it would bite. Even if you have the brain capacity of someone who's a few beans short of a chalupa, you could replicate this footage. Just remember to practice this a few mistakes high before coming to the deck. Speaking of CG, there's one important thing to note with this model which holds true for most. Shifting the CG beyond the furthest recommended aft limit negates some of the plane's docile habits and replaces it with characteristics more akin to having a seizure. For this reason, we recommend flying it at the furthest aft CG recommended by FMS for the best high alpha performance.
Wow.
As a side note, you may be able to get rid of some of the wing wag with the beyond suggested limits aft CG by using a gyro. Because of its forgiving characteristics when flown per the manual, we definitely recommend this as someone's first jet. It's got a great price point, is made of repairable foam, and is super maneuverable. If this is your first jet though, there is one thing to take note of. If you fly off a hard surface runway, be aware that the main landing gear is only held in by 2 plastic clips. These could break easily after a couple hard landings, so optionally, you could simply just plan to hand launch it and land it in the grass to avoid hurting the gear. Also, we would argue that it's better to have the gear pop out of the plastic clips on a bad landing rather than tear out entire chunks of foam, so we can see why FMS may have went the simple route with the plastic gear plates.
While we're on the topic of the gear, there's one thing to be aware of, especially when flying with the recommended CG off nearly perfectly smooth surfaces. This plane likes to stick to the ground due to a couple likely things. 1. The negative angle between the chord line of the wing and the ground when this plane sits on the included landing gear. And 2. The canards coupled with this negative angle acting as pseudo-spoilers providing downforce on the nose during the takeoff roll. During this particular takeoff, I waited to raise the elevator as long as I was comfortable with while accelerating, but with the fence fast approaching, I ended up bringing in full up elevator trying to get it off. Even with the up elevator input, I had to still wait until it eventually shot into the air quicker than your redneck neighbor shooting off fireworks in broad daylight. This wasn't as prominent once we shifted the CG back, but it's certainly something to keep in the back of your mind on your first flight if your runway is as pristine as this track was. It should be noted that the plane had no issues getting airborne off of our home field's bumpy runway. Once you're in the air, aerobatics are a breeze. 4-point rolls feel locked, along with slow rolls.
Call me Bucky, lucky that I'm innocent. If I didn't have no molos, I'd be innocent. How about rapping conscious but he ignorant? How you from the hood but still gon' go legitimate? How you...
Don't expect vertical uplines, but she has ample power to carry through larger climbs without feeling at risk of forming an accelerated stall. As you could probably tell, inverted high alphas are locked as well. A couple things to note when attempting these though is to be precise and small in your inputs, especially on the rudder, in order to prevent any unwanted wing drops. I had one turn in inverted high alpha that had both Ben and I's pucker factors higher than Snoop Dogg, but as long as you're gentle with your inputs, the Rafale won't bite. We already went over the CG aspect of our setup, but let's take a closer look at what else we did. We set control surfaces to full travel digitally up until the servo's bound because more is always better. However, the Elevon control arms are fixed with only one position, so there's no way to get any more travel out of them mechanically, unfortunately. As far as a receiver, we used a spare Spectrum AR8020T. In our transmitter, setting it up was as easy as changing the wing type to Elevon B, and verifying servo reversing is needed. Additionally, for Expo, we opted to go with 40% all around. The Rafale does come with optional armament, which snaps into place under the wing and can be installed or taken off in seconds. Most of our flights we left them off because we think the lighter and cleaner an airplane is, the better it flies. But if scale details are important to you, the included armament is high quality. One of our favorite things about the scheme is the quote on the nose. It embodies some of the folks in our hobby who take themselves and flying toy airplanes a bit too seriously. Aside from what was already shown, we did try some other maneuvers with it, such as a flat spin and an inverted flat spin. While the Rafale did it well inverted with the vertical stab and clean air, when she was right side up, it was funny to witness her decelerate through every turn or so from the vertical stab and rudder being blanketed. Definitely stick to doing these inverted, unless you go flight test DIY mode and add thrust vectoring. Be sure to set your timers properly, because this bird burns through packs quicker than a chain smoker. Our flight timer with the Liperior 4S2200 is set to 3 minutes. We didn't try it with FMS's largest suggested pack size of a 4S2600, but we're sure you could get another 30 seconds to a minute out of it depending on how you fly it. That being said, your adrenaline will get flowing with this jet, especially if you try more difficult maneuvers with it, so you'll probably be ready to land after a few minutes as it is. If you've noticed, we like to be dead honest during our reviews. While FMS did send us this model for free, we made it explicitly clear that we want to be able to share our honest thoughts on it. They stood behind their product and happily agreed. And with that, our honest opinion is that if you're interested in this plane, we can't recommend it enough. There's few jets out there that fly as well as this one, let alone in the 64mm class. If you'd like to support our channel, consider using our affiliate link in the description to purchase one of your own. Be sure to hit subscribe and the bell if you'd like to know whenever we post. Happy landings and bounce one on for us. As always, we'll see you next time with a new upload.